Sometimes our habits are also a bit of a safety net. Sometimes we think that, well, how am I going to be able to cope with my life if I don't go to food, especially if there's big things like loneliness, or if you don't have connection, the kind of connection that you want in your life. Sometimes there are fears of success or fears of failure. Some people will almost intentionally fail because they don't want to fail on their own. So they want to kind of make the failure happen. Sometimes we're afraid of success because what if now we no longer have our struggle with weight and food? And that makes you think that now I'll have to go do something else or make something big of my life.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you are stepping into who you are meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. Today I have on the show Tanja Shaw, and Tanja is a fellow FDNP, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. She's a kinesiologist and a high performance coach, and she's the founder of Fit and Vibrant You coaching programs, the owner of Ascend Fitness and Lifestyle, which is a holistic health coaching studio in British Columbia. And she's the host of the Fit and Vibrant You podcast, and you can go check out our interview that I did for her on her podcast. But she combines brain science with body science and helps women over 50 stop emotional eating, regain their energy, and really reach their healthy weight and the life that they want and to be able to live vibrantly. And today we're talking about that. We're talking about the brain science and putting that together with the body science. We're talking about self-sabotage. And we've talked about self-sabotage before just in terms of generally speaking about it. But specifically today, we're talking about how that actually affects our wellness and our wellness goals, our health goals, our weight loss goals, and why women specifically can be, I don't like to use the word victim, but we can be victims of self-sabotage within our own mind, and how we can really recognize that and overcome that. And really break that self-sabotage cycle. So she's got a lot of tangible takeaways here for y'all to really help put that brain science with the body science. So take notes and let's jump in.
Hey, y'all. I'm here with Tanja, and we are talking all things mindset today, as she is a high performance coach, as I mentioned. And we are talking about mindset, self-sabotage, kind of what keeps us from reaching our goals or kind of reaching the goals that we set for ourselves. So thanks so much for joining me today, Tanja.
Well, thanks for having me. I am excited to speak to your audience and provide as much value as I can in our time together.
Yes, me too. Me too. So fun. Okay. So let's start with kind of the basics on this topic. As I mentioned before we started recording, we've talked a little bit about the mind and kind of the mind works and stuff on this show. But when we're specifically talking about self-sabotage, can you just give us kind of like the overview of what self-sabotage is and then how it kind of shows up?
Yeah. So self-sabotage, I use the word because we just use it in common language, but I actually find it very dramatic. And also it doesn't actually help us solve the actual problem. So self-sabotage really is just simply not doing the things you could do, should do, or want to do to meet your future goals. And we often get stuck with this big dramatic way of saying like, I'm just self-sabotaging myself. And you're not really. Sabotaging often means you're doing something intentionally harmful. But what all you're doing is you're just not following through on your commitments to yourself. Or sometimes we haven't even made those commitments in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I like to break down what gets in the way from us actually following through on the things we say we want to do or should do, could do, want to do in order to reach your goals. Because as you know, having the best plan in the world is wonderful, but it's not going to do anything if you don't actually do the plan.
Mm-hmm. Right. What do you see that shows up the most that keeps people from reaching those things?
So I break it down to, I call it the 3 layers of self-sabotage. And there are lots of different things, which is why it can take some time to uncover it. But it ultimately starts with clarity on knowing what you want and what your goals are. Because sometimes we say we self-sabotage, but we never actually set a goal or create a realistic plan. We just say, like, I'm just going to eat better. And then we wonder why we didn't, because we never set ourselves up for success. So the first layer of self-sabotage is the what we do. It's really the habits. And sometimes what happens is we go too hard too soon on a plan. that's just too intense, or it's not the right plan for us. We wonder why we can't stick with some diet plan when we have all these intense sugar cravings or emotion cravings for emotional eating, when we're not actually feeling your body properly for our body, which is why what you do and what I do in terms of customizing protocols and making sure it's the right fit for the person is so important. Because otherwise, like, let's take an extreme example, is the cabbage soup diet. And I hope that none of us do that right now, but you wonder why you're binging on, pizza and popcorn and bread. Is because your body is wanting fuel and you can't fight physiology. And so the first part is to make sure that what you're doing, the actual plan, is in alignment with your body, your lifestyle, your preferences, even your bandwidth. And we often say things like, we all have the same 24 hours a day in a day. And we say it's lack of time, but generally it's not lack of time, it's lack of bandwidth to make a change.
Right.
And so look at the reality of your situation. If you're trying to do too much and then you wonder why you can't stick with it because you're stressed out and burnt out, you're just not working with yourself. So that's the first part, is making sure that what you are doing is right for your body and is going to actually fuel you and nourish you. Because sometimes we do get those carb cravings or sugar cravings because we're not eating the right foods for our bodies. So that's the big one. And that's where most plans and what most diet plans focus on, even in the FDN program, like that's what we work on. We work on the protocols, we work on the systems and the habits, which is all, I'm not saying it's not important. It's absolutely important, but it's only one component of all of the three layers. The next step is our thoughts. It's our thoughts and our emotions, because it doesn't matter if you have the best plan if you are convincing yourself that this one little thing doesn't matter. Or if you're saying, I'm too stressed out and I don't care. We usually start strong at the beginning of the day. We have great intentions, or all going to be amazing. And then by afternoon, evening, where our bandwidth has gone down, our willpower has gone down, then those other thoughts come up. And so how you think is going to impact your choices. If you believe that, and you're telling yourself that, well, I need to eat this right now because it's free, or my mom made it, or it doesn't matter, or I'll start again tomorrow, or I'm not losing the weight anyway, or you have that all or nothing mindset where it's like, well, I slipped up here, I might as well just go, all bets are off. I have to eat all the things, start again tomorrow. All of that is going to impact your actions. And so I spend a lot of time with the women I work with on becoming better thinkers, on challenging our thoughts, learning how to think differently so that our thoughts are in alignment with the person that we want to be. We often believe that just by doing the habits, by following the plan, by doing like all the great things, the intermittent fasting and the strength workouts, that we're going to change who we are inside. We're going to change our mindset and our way that we think, but we don't. We absolutely need to do both of them separately. You got to do the thing, but then also upgrade the way that you think, because your thoughts do control your actions. And sometimes we say things like, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, but your words will. And if you don't believe that, imagine telling your child every single day that they suck and that they're not good at math. Like, they're never going to go and pursue things because they have that belief system of themselves. So it's really, really important that we start to learn how to think differently. And I want everyone out there to know that this is not a one-time thing where you just learn a course or you take a program and then you're like, hey, I'm done. Like, all my thoughts are positive. And it's really a work in progress always. And there are going to be times where your thoughts are going to be not helpful. They're going to be very negative or self-condemning. And that's just part of the process. But you have the tools, and I teach the tools to overcome them. So just because you know the tools, it doesn't mean that you never need to use them again. You just need to bring them out and let it out. So the first one, like I said, is the what you do. And then the second part is how we think and processing our emotions. The emotional part of that is huge as well. And it's not always big emotions. Sometimes it's small emotions, like needing to have a break, or eating for pleasure, or boredom, or entertainment. And sometimes there's bigger problems. A lot of the women I work with, sometimes they feel lonely, or they want to have intimacy and they don't have that in their life, or they feel so stressed or overwhelmed. And how can we start to work through that without going to food? Because food is a very temporary fix from the emotions. It doesn't solve the actual problem. And I know we know that intellectually, But in the moment, those emotions feel so strong that we just want to get away from them. And so it's a part of learning how to process emotions, learning how to become a better thinker, learning how to also adjust your life so that the emotions don't always get so huge, or the stress doesn't get so big in your life. That's really, really important. And a lot of the work I do is on the emotional coaching side of things, because I don't know about you, but I never learned that growing up. It was always about, don't cry, or I'll give you something to cry about, and that sort of language. And there's no, when you call someone emotional, there's nothing positive about that. Like, you don't say that being positive,
right,
in our society. So it's really about learning how to process our emotions. And the third layer of self-sabotage, the other thing that gets in our way. So the first one is like not doing the right plan for you, not going too hard too soon. The second one is how we think, and really the surface excuses, or the thoughts that get in the way. But then underneath that is something deeper, and that's our beliefs, and our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about the world. And beliefs are like thoughts, just deeper. And they're so deep that we don't even know that we are thinking them, that they are there. And beliefs are something that are going to affect how we think, and also how we feel, and our actions. And like I said, we don't even know that they're there, which is why it's really a bit of a process to be kind with yourself, to give yourself the space and the time, the curiosity to start to uncover them. So for example, a lot of my women have had a history of trauma in their life, and we've all had trauma in our life. Some have big trauma. Some have beliefs that if I lose the weight, I will have unwanted attention, and fat becomes a safety guard. Sometimes our habits are also a bit of a safety net. Sometimes we think that, well, how am I going to be able to cope with my life if I don't go to food, especially if there's big things like loneliness, or if you don't have connection, that the kind of connection that you want in your life. Sometimes there are fears of success or fears of failure. Some people will almost intentionally fail because they don't want to fail on their own. So they want to kind of make the failure happen. Sometimes we're afraid of success because what if now we no longer have our struggle with weight and food, and that makes you think that now I'll have to go do something else or make something big of my life. And maybe you've always had this idea that, when I lose the weight, I will, or you have this idea, even if you never verbalize it, you have this idea in your head, and you're afraid that now that you lost the weight, you're going to have to go do the other thing,
right,
where your struggle with food and weight loss was the scapegoat to protect yourself from doing that. Sometimes we have this idea that, like, will I be able to keep it off? Sometimes we have a perfectionism. I'd say about 99% of the women I work with struggle with perfectionism. And perfectionism comes from the limiting belief, what makes me good enough is what other people think of me. And when you have that belief, and I know like you might even hear that and say, well, that's not me, but deep down there's something there. And until we uncover the limiting beliefs, it's really hard to make consistent progress. Now, I'm not saying that you have to just stop what you're doing and uncover every single limiting belief that you have, because you will never, ever do that. They'll keep coming up as you go. But it's a process of keep through all three layers as you go through this journey. Mm-hmm. It's keep working on the habits, what you're doing, keep challenging your mindset, keep preloading your brain with new thoughts that you want to think, the thoughts that are helpful, the thoughts that are in alignment with the person you want to be, and start to eradicate the beliefs that are no longer serving you and replacing them with new beliefs. And this is not an easy task. This is not a thing that will ever be completed. And you can just say, okay, I checked that box. Now all my beliefs are wonderful and positive. But it's really about this journey that you go on with yourself. And the one I think I love, Hope, about working with my clients and the women I work with is weight loss is just the surface. And it's a symptom of the things that are going, waking is a symptom of the other things going on underneath.
Right.
And when you start to break through that, it not just impacts how your body looks, which is the weight loss, but it impacts your entire life, your relationships, because we live life in our own head. And when that changes, like everything changes, and it is so, so powerful.
Yep. I love that. And I think you brought up a good point, because you were talking about how you have the tools and you kind of have to like take them out again when you need them. And it's not a thing like, oh, I checked this off the box and I'm like fixed forever. And I think that's where a lot of women get stuck is, they do all this work and they see these changes, but then, something happens, life happens, right? And it kind of throws them off track a little bit. And then when they feel like, well, crap, I've done all this work and I should be fixed, but it's not quote fixed. They kind of throw in the towel like, well, it didn't work. So do you have any tips to kind of like navigate that? Because it's life. Like we know what's going to happen. Things are going to throw us off course. So how do we stick with that? Like the work you're talking about with the thoughts, the beliefs and all that, even when things throw us off course and it seems like it's not working.
Mm-hmm. I really love that you highlighted that point because I think it is something that really gets us stuck. Mm-hmm. And that's another form of that perfectionism,
right?
Where that, and it's funny because perfectionism, you might have like cured it over here, whereas like my eating is not 100% perfect anymore, but now it pops up somewhere else.
That's been me for years, figuring, here it's popping up here again.
Yeah, it comes up. And this idea that there isn't arriving. I mean, the first thing, Hope, is knowing that there is no arriving.
Right.
And that knowing intellectually, but then also from like a heart knowledge that there is no arriving. And the other part is, there's a couple things here. One is to make sure you have some system of reviewing yourself regularly and checking in with your thoughts, checking in. Like, this is why I love journaling, is so that you have a plan and then you reflect on, like, you have the plan. And then, I mean, all consistency is follow through. All follow through is like your environment and your mindset. So you know what your plan is. And if you're not following through, then check yourself. Is it my mindset or is it the environment that needs to be adjusted? Mm-hmm. One thing I work with my women on is we have an overcoming challenges process where you can actually go through step by step. It's kind of like a journaling process, but we have a worksheet that we go through. So when these things come up, you have a process to go through, because what happens is you have the challenges and then your brain starts to be filled with the self-doubt. And then you think things like, I don't care anymore. The excitement wears off. And so it's so good to have an actual process of journaling or getting those thoughts out of your head onto paper so you can start to work through them. And when you start to work through them on paper, you bring forward your higher thinking brain and not just the emotional brain that's telling you like that you're a failure. Mm-hmm. And I think that part is so important.
Yeah.
And that's why I recommend probably every single day, multiple times a day, to my clients to journal, to get things out of your head. If we ever had a really hard math problem, we don't just do it in our head. We write it down on paper.
Right.
And same thing with these kind of things.
Point. That's such a good point. I've never heard that analogy, and it's so great because I'm a huge fan and component of journaling too. And that's such a good analogy. So yeah, that makes total sense.
You can use it everywhere.
Yes. I love it. I love it. That's such good advice. So I find that, and I'm sure you see this, like, because this is like the women you work with, that a lot of times women, like, especially because you're a high performance coach, like you work with like high performing women, right? Like really driven women. So we have women who are high performing, right? In their career or their job, their business or whatever. And you see that, they set these goals and they're really committed to these goals in their business, but then they try to make the same goals with their health or their weight loss or whatever. And it just doesn't stick the same. Like, what do you see as the reason that oftentimes, and I say women specifically, because I feel like that's probably more prominent, but that women find it, I don't want to say it that way, that women can more easily, I don't know how to say it without being like, I'm not trying to be judgy here, but they can more easily stick to, their business goals or their career goals or whatever. But when it comes to the health and the wellness, they tend to self-sabotage more in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And just to back up, as a high performance coach, actually, the women I work with, I work specifically with women over 50, but I work with women who are, some are in the workforce, some are retired, but they all have the common goal of wanting to master this problem of the emotional on again, off again.
Right.
What I found is for a lot of women, when they apply what they use in business and for other parts of their life to this, they actually get a lot of results. It's just that sometimes we separate the two so much. Right. And we think like, and again, it's the mindset, it's the belief system, like, I can't do it in this area. Mm-hmm. The other part is sometimes when things are more challenging and we have a history of not being so good at something, we don't want to try so hard at it. Let's say if you are having a hard time at home with your family and you're crushing it at business and work, you're going to want to go to work. It's just sort of what we're doing. The other part is that we often make this make it not a negotiable. We think that our health is something that we like, it's a nice to have sometimes, or we say it's important, but our actions and our thoughts and our energy and our where we put our time, energy, resources, finances doesn't really show the same thing. And that's a big part too. And another part comes from all those limiting beliefs that we have, about worthiness. Sometimes we are ashamed to say that we want to lose weight. because there's so much shame. And like now we're supposed to be just appreciating your body no matter what. And I do think you can appreciate your body no matter what, but there's so many conflicting messages out there. And it's things like other things too, is work is something that you get to do. And most of the time with food, it's something that you're not doing. It's not eating. It's not overeating.
Yep.
And that's another thing too. So I think that I don't know if there's one exact reason why but there's multiple things. And when you prioritize your health and your wellness and you put the same level of intention and energy into it, and you have that beginner mindset and you know that you are going to mess up along the way, I think all of those can really serve you in the path forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. Do you find that when you're working with these women that, because you were saying like how women kind of separate the two, right? Like they separate kind of like the business goals, the health goals. It's like two separate things. Or they think like, well, I can't have it all. Like I can have this one, but not that one. Do you come up against kind of helping women through the like worthiness piece? Do you find that pops up a lot with the self-sabotage? Is it's kind of like the self-worth piece that comes up for them in that way too?
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And I think it does. I mean, it does for a lot of us. Like, even if as I speak this right now, like it's for me too, like something I'm continuously working through is this idea of like, who am I? And even the idea of, I'm doing a workshop with my alumni group next week on pleasure. And sometimes we have this idea like, pleasure is earned, or I don't deserve pleasure, or it's wrong to want, like all of these things. So, and a lot of it does come to the worthiness piece. I did a podcast on that actually last week on worthiness. And because I had two clients actually email me in 1 week. And one client, she's like, your program helped me stop the cycle of hopelessness and helplessness that she just went through. And a common theme that is like this idea that I am worthy of loving myself. And it's such I know it sounds so kind of fluffy. And we're like, no, I just want to lose weight. But ultimately we want to feel good.
Yeah.
Like that's the core desired feeling.
Yeah.
And we think weight loss is going to get us there, and it can be part of it.
Right.
But weight loss will get you to a smaller size. And if you don't work on the worthiness and self-love along the way, then it becomes conditional love. And it becomes something that you only get to do when you're a smaller size. And then instead of worrying about wanting to lose weight, you now are stuck in this smaller body, worrying about weight gain and still being stressed and anxious around food. So absolutely. And just like everything else, it's not one thing that you just it just happens right away. It absolutely is a layering process. And it does take, I like to say it doesn't just take time, it takes effort and energy in practice. Yeah. It's an intentional choice to love yourself and to talk to yourself in a certain way and to catch those other thoughts that are coming up and to redirect them and to keep going.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Well, and kind of going back to what you were saying about, like, we can make all the goals in the world, but if we're not like retraining who we are, like that's kind of the piece of it. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the worthiness piece, because that's what I was going to ask you, like, because it's kind of like in the world of affirmations, right? Like you can say all the affirmations in the world, but if your subconscious isn't on board, they're not going to stick. Like you're just saying fluffy words that don't mean anything. But I feel like it's the same thing with the goals, right? Like if we're not really like training our brains to be like, this is me, this is who I am, then it's not going to stick, right? So do you have any tips there, strategies there for women? Like, because for a lot of women, this is like totally rewiring their brain, right? Especially if they're women over 50 and they've spent their whole life thinking and believing a certain way. Or like this is like seriously like brain training, right? So do you have any ways that women can start to retrain their mind and rewire their brain in that way? Because I think it starts with, like you said, with how you talk to yourself and that kind of thing. But is there anything else they can do to recondition that part of them? Absolutely.
So first of all, to understand that it is possible, and it's absolutely possible no matter how old you are, because quite often we have this idea that because my dad's a great example. I could never coach my dad, but he's like, he believes that because he's been doing things a certain way, he's now 78, that
he can't do him any other way.
It's in his blood, it's in his DNA, it's who he is. And so if you have that belief, and you really do believe that, it's hard to change. So that's why it's also great to be around a community of other people who are doing it. And the power community is huge. Totally. So first of all, understanding that it is possible. The second part is that it becomes like, think about like you're watering a flower, and you can't just take a bucket of water and just like dump a bucket of water on the flower and like, okay, it's fine now.
Right.
We need to do these little things on a regular basis to start to let it sink in. I love the book. I think it's called Soundtracks by John Acuff. I think it's his book. he says that the head runs and the heart walks. So that the brain can believe things sooner intellectually, but it takes time for it to happen here.
Totally.
And when it happens here, it's like you hear things over and over again, but all of a sudden it just sinks into your bones. And I really don't think that there's like a 3-step process to get there or a 5-step process. It is practicing those thoughts, challenging the thoughts that are not helpful over and over, surrounding yourself. So affirmations are absolutely helpful, but they have to be true and they have to be realistic. So saying things like, I'm in the best shape of my life may not be true, but you can say things like that are true or neutral things. For example, you can say, I am working on, today I'm committed to. The other big thing about this whole value and worthiness is also recognizing the great things that we do. I mean, I send my women coaching notes every day, and I think every single coaching note could be on this, and they would still need to hear it more. But to give yourself credit for the things that you're doing every day. Celebrate the wins. We talk about it. We like it. We share it on social media, but we don't do it. And unless you recognize the things that you are doing, there will always be a disconnect between the things you're doing and who you want to be, because you've never reinforced that. You could be going for the walk and drinking the water and meal prepping and stopping eating when you've had enough and taking your supplements or whatever. But until you recognize like, hey, I did that. And because I am a fit, vibrant, healthy woman, nothing is going to stick. And then the other part with all of this is feeding your soul energetically and leading into your higher power, whether it is God or spirit or universe or Mother Nature, is that you're not alone through all this. And you were created for a purpose, on purpose. And you are meant to step into your worthiness. You were built perfectly, and others believe it. Now it's time for you to believe in yourself as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. And I love the piece. I think those are the two biggest pieces. I think I guess, kind of underestimate the community piece you were talking about, and then connecting to the higher power. Because in both senses, it's like, we're not doing it by ourselves. And I think we kind of put ourselves on an island sometimes, thinking like you're in it all, and you're not. So I love those things are crucial.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when we think that we're on our own, when we feel like we are like something's wrong with us.
Right.
And then it also puts a lot of stress on us. I know for myself, whenever I feel like kind of not so great, one of the core themes is that I feel like I'm doing everything myself. Like I feel like maybe like there's the housework and then my businesses and all this kind of stuff. And all it takes is for me to recognize that I have so much help, and I have help from the person who's stocking the grocery store. Like, thank goodness that they're there. I have help from the person who is filling up the gas stations with gas so I can drive my car. I have help from God, from my higher power. I have help from my husband, who's also working on his own things. I see my son, who's also working at school, doing his thing. We have so much help. I have help from the women who have come before me, who now have given me the opportunity to vote and to have a voice in the world. I mean, if I was born 200 years ago, we couldn't do this. So we have so much help. We do have so much help.
So true. It's so true. It's such a good point. I want to switch gears a little bit, because I always like to get a little bit of a story here, because everybody's got a story with how you picked this direction. So what led you to go in this direction, working with women in the way you do as a high performance coach?
Yeah, well, we teach what we need.
Yep, exactly.
So I love fitness and health and all that kind of good stuff. So I did my degree in kinesiology, but I graduated back in 2004. And when I graduated, I started working as a kin at a physiotherapy clinic, and I started personal training. And I love the personal training side of things. Fast forward 3 years, I moved to Chilliwack, where I live now. I started my own personal training business. I opened a studio, and I work very closely with men and women. And I thought health was all about macros and cutting carbs and high intensity workouts and strength training and discipline. And they got results. Like, everyone got results, but no one could actually stick with it for the long term. And then because I was working with men and women so closely, you really get to know like the things that are actually going on inside of them.
Yep.
And it was, for me, at the same time, like, I was dealing with my own rocky relationship with food and exercise and weight, and, trying to be committed, but then sneaking food and berating myself and judging myself by the number on the scale and all the things. And I knew that like there had to be another way. There was something missing. And it was actually in 2015 that I really, like, at the beginning of 2015, like, it just hit me that I did not want to look back at my life and be on my deathbed or in an old age home and regret not fully living because I was stuck in the cycle. And, talking about the head knowledge and the heart knowledge, like, that's when it came to heart knowledge. And I realized that something needed to change really, like, in a big way for me. And so I really set out to find that gap between knowing and doing, and filling out what actually is getting in the way from us living our best lives. And like mindset piece, it's not everything. What you do is also important. And it's also the soul piece, the belief piece, but it's such an important piece. And I really, I dove in. The first book I read, I think that kind of challenged my beliefs, was Intuitive Eating. And I had to read it more than once. And the first time I read it, I really did not like it. Mm-hmm. I wanted just to go on the next diet to fix my problems. Mm-hmm. It didn't. So I read that, and I got into Janine Roth's books, and I read so much more and just learned so much more about what actually gets in the way, because we could have all the information in the world. And the women I work with, I mean, they've gone through so much hard things in their life, and some of them, they're struggling. Like they struggle with, some of them, they've been told when they were 8 years old that, that they can't have the dessert because they're too fat, or their brother gets to go search for Easter eggs, but they get dimes because they can't eat the chocolate. Oh. Like when you are told those things, when you still believe in Santa Claus, like talking about how deep these beliefs get. Mm-hmm. And I just and then when I see what's possible with women, I mean, of all ages, but I work 50 plus, who can overcome these challenges and who can make peace with food and start living their life. It lit a spark, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
And then, and then at Ascend too, I've definitely changed how we coach there as well. Ascend is mostly focused, that's my personal training studio, mostly focused on the physical. We spend a lot of time on very, very specific exercises for our clients, but the online space is where I really dive a lot more into the mindset.
Yeah. It's so important. And like you said, we typically teach the things that we need the most in ourselves. So I love that. And we have a similar story. There's a lot of similarities there with my story too. And what is that saying? I heard Wayne Dyer say it the other day in one of his books, like the teacher shows up when you're ready. And it's like, you find the moment when you're ready, and then everything starts to click. So I love the story. It's so awesome. So I do have one last question that I want to finish with before I ask you that. Can you let everybody know where to find out more about you and everything that you do with working with self-sabotage and all of your mindset work?
Yeah, thank you. And the best is, listen to the podcast. Is probably the best. I also have a podcast, which we're going to do the interview in a few days here.
Yes.
It's called the Fit and Vibrant You podcast, Fit and Vibrant You. If you are listening to podcasts, that's a great way to connect. And then from there, I have Instagram, Facebook, and then my website are kind of where I hang out. I'm new to TikTok. So just so you can follow me there too, but mostly across the board, I'm at Tanja Shaw or Tanja_Shaw. And my name is spelled with a J, Tanja. But once you are connected on the podcast, then you can find the links everywhere from there.
Perfect. Cool. Of course, I'll have all that in the show notes and the link to her podcast. And you can go check out her interview for that as well, because I'll be on her podcast.
Yes.
Okay. So the last question I want to ask you is, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
To live with purpose is to connect what you're doing to your purpose every day. And what I mean is, so often we do things like, for example, we go for the walks, or we drink the water, or we have date night. But until you link what you're doing to the purpose behind, let's say you want to have that strong, connected, loving relationship, and you say, I'm having this date night because my purpose is having a strong, connected relationship, or you're drinking the water, or you're whatever you're doing because your health is important to you. And I think purpose is very multifactorial. Then the action's the same, but the feeling's different. And that's living life on purpose. It's having the intention, but not just doing the thing, connecting the dots. And when you do that, my goodness, life changes.
Oh, it's so true. And I love what you said, living on purpose. That's perfect. I love that. That's so true. So poignant. Thank you so much, Tanja, for sharing all of your insight and your knowledge and helping everybody break through self-sabotage. There's a lot of good nuggets here. So thanks so much for sharing your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I know how I can provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics that you want to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's at The Hope Pedraza, or visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.